Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for joining us and giving us time today to talk about what it is you do and how you earn your living. So I'm going to jump straight in and ask you, what is your job, and can you explain what you do?
Sure. I run a music school. So when I was a late teenager, a family friend asked if I would teach their child piano. I'd been having lessons, and I agreed. And my business kind of grew from there. It started off with me teaching a few students, and then it became a few more and a few more. And eventually it got to the point where I had too many students. And I invited a friend of mine who was a music teacher at the time to come along and work alongside me. We then had two music rooms, obviously, that we were working from, just the two of us. And now we have seven music rooms and a team of over 20 teachers. The music school is in Ash near Sandwich, and lots of children and adults come to us for lessons at the music school. As time's gone on, my job's become more paperwork based, organising the music school rather than teaching. But I do still teach a bit of music myself to some adults and some children who are home ed as well.
Awesome. So so you did mention sort of timeline. How long would you say that the school's been up and running now?
So as me teaching myself one-to-one was 10 years prior to the music school being set up, and the music school's been set up about 15 years now.
Oh wow, we're going to a little while then. Well established.
Yeah, we're well established. Yes.
Was it
You think
was it
we
always
hope we know what
something?
we're doing.
Yeah. Was it always something you want to do? You know, when you said you started off one-to-one teaching, but was it always in your mind that you thought that's my goal?
Never. Everyone would always ask the question when I was a child and a teen, like, what do you want to do when you're a grown up? And I had no idea. I'm still wondering now if there's another calling. Things can change as life goes on. But no, it just happened organically, and I was really pleased that my parents had paid for me to have music lessons. Obviously, in addition to my schooling, we didn't do much music at school. This was an outside of school thing. And then I just passed on the skill that I'd learned through my lessons to other young people. At first, I was just teaching children. I think I'd have been terrified if anyone asked me to teach a grown up at that point. But now I actually prefer teaching adults because they tend to be more flexible with their time than children are. So, yeah, no, it was definitely not a planned career path. And the music school grew organically as well, just purely through me having too many pupils and then somebody else having too many pupils. And before we knew it, we had, 20 odd teachers. So.
Wow, wow. So you've probably already answered most of this question. I was next going to ask, well, can you describe the journey you went on to get to your current role? Did you have other jobs before you did this, for example?
Yeah, alongside teaching, I also went to university, so I wasn't working full time in the early days. After university, I decided to focus a little bit more on the teaching, take on more pupils, but mostly that was evenings and weekends because I was still too scared to teach, grown-ups. So during the day, I nannied for a family near Canterbury. And I was with them from the point the last baby was born. They had four children until he went to school. At that point, I then had my own daughter. So my teaching has fit in around my daughter, and then 10 years later, my son who came along. So we fit that in around, and also I home-ed my daughter for quite a while, and the teaching fit in around that too, which was really nice.
Yeah. Would you mentioned you went to university? Did you need specific qualifications to get to the point you're at now?
No. So what I learned at university and actually doing A levels at school, because I had a traditional schooling. I went to primary school, secondary school. There was never any mention of homeschool for me. It just wasn't even a thing on the radar for my parents. So everything that I did at school and at university, I've not actually used as an adult at all. I passed my music grades, and I continued to do those and to learn and still do professional development training now, which means that I still go on courses relevant to music teaching. That's not because it's necessarily a requirement, but it's just good as a professional to continue to learn. So my schooling didn't stop when I left university. I'll still do courses like first aid courses, to make sure that my knowledge there is good. Courses related to children with additional needs or adults with additional needs, so that I'm more aware of best teaching practice for those pupils. And also obviously courses related to music teaching, new developments with technology, because obviously when I started teaching some years ago, if children wanted to do compositions, for example, which is making up their own music, it would all be paper based, it would all be written down with a pen and a pencil. Whereas nowadays, obviously, there are loads of programs on the computer to compose your music. So just courses and learning that stays up to date with those developments, really.
Cool. So what would you say is the best part of your job?
That I don't have somebody else who's my boss. I was never a big fan at school, or as a grown-up, if I'm honest, at being told what to do. So it's better for me to be my own boss and to be able to make my decisions. If we decide that we want to give somebody a whole load of free music lessons, I can make that decision. If I decide that I want to redecorate the bathroom at the music school, I make that decision. I don't have to go and ask somebody's permission to do something. And I think that for me as an individual, that was always going to be very important. Nannying worked well for that, because obviously the mother went off to work and left me in charge of her children. So again, I was able to choose what activities and things I did with them at the time, which groups we went to, whether we went to swimming or gymnastics. She kind of left me in charge of that while she went off to work. So all of my work life really has been me being in control of what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's funny, the common thing with all the self-employed people that have been interviewed this week, myself included, has said the same thing: being your own boss and not having to be told what to
Yeah, it's important for some people.
do. I think you might have lost connection there. Did you hear my last question? What was the worst part of your job?
The worst part is the paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with it. Obviously, sorting out insurance, criminal record checks for new teachers, interviewing teachers. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with it, and that it's not so enjoyable. I don't hate it, but it's not as much fun as teaching.
Cool. So my next question was going to be, what's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in order to get to the point you are now? There's probably loads, but what would you say is the biggest challenge?
I'd say the biggest challenge is when we've had to move, because we're in rented property always. You're always at the sort of hands of the landlord. And we've had to move twice. And that's been the biggest challenge. One time we ended up having to move quite quickly, and we were in sort of village halls that we were using and things like that. And it was quite good fun to try different premises and different instruments. But we were very glad when we got our own studios in Worth. And then we moved from Worth to Ash. And that's the biggest challenge, definitely, because as a music school, it's quite unique. We can't just go and rent any old office building. We have to make sure that we sort out the soundproofing and stuff like that, and deal with builders to make sure that the rooms are all good enough to be able to teach next door to each other, because we might have drums being taught in one room whilst classical piano is being taught in the other. So we have to make sure that we've got enough soundproofing and things like that between the rooms, fire doors. So it's quite a big deal when we move. We hope we're not going to have to do it again anytime soon. But they're definitely the biggest hurdles and the most exhausting times, for sure.
A bit like moving house. It's meant to be one of those stressful things you can do.
It is, but obviously with like 20 staff to move and 400 pupils, it's like a really big house move.
And a massive family.
Yes. And moving those pianos, our removals guy, every time I speak to him, he's like, no, please, no more pianos.
Not again.
He loves it.
So if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would be your plan B career or job?
I don't know, really. I'm sure that I'd find something. I'd always thought that I might like to be a school teacher. I did do a year working in school, but I didn't think it was quite for me. So I don't know. Maybe now that I'm older, I would enjoy that experience more. I honestly don't know, but I'd find something.
As someone who's been there, the whole being told what to do and not being able to manage things yourself, in teaching, it's quite rife in that sense. So you probably wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I feel the paperwork would be off-putting.
Yes. Yeah, you probably spend more time doing that than actually teaching.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to anyone either wanting to work in the music industry generally or wanted to do something like what you've done and setting up their own music school?
Yeah, I mean, setting up the music school didn't come immediately. I was teaching on my own for a while, and that was hard because obviously there's a lot of doubt there. Am I doing this right? Because I didn't have colleagues to bounce off. Whereas now, obviously, we've got colleagues to bounce off. It's much, much nicer. I would say talk to people, definitely. Find out how they got to the point that they are, individual music teachers. If you want to go into, you know, being in a band, perhaps progressing that, then speak to music teachers who've probably also done that. Most of our teachers are also performing. They don't just teach. Most have got another thing that they're doing, and a lot are in bands, some of which have done very well, some of which haven't, but they're having fun. So I would say, you know, whether you're doing music in school or outside of school, definitely focus and work hard at that. It doesn't have to be a standard kind of exam system that you go through. You just have to get really good at what you do, and then really good at being able to share that knowledge with other people.
Yeah.
So watch other people. If anybody watching wants to come along and kind of see how teaching works, to sit in a room, to watch other teachers and see how they do it, and they'd be more than welcome.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, shadowing and observing, you can pick up so much from doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
Actually,
really
even if we swap a teacher, so we've got a teacher who's going to be leaving soon, and the person who's taking over from that teacher will be going to sit in the room and shadow them. Even though they're an experienced teacher themselves, they're still going to sit in there and see how that teacher does it with those particular pupils. And that's really, really helpful for them. And that's an experienced teacher doing that, let alone somebody wanting to get into it in the first place. We have had quite a few kids that have come to us on work experience and done things like that. Also seen the kind of day-to-day running of things, fixing the instruments because they break a fair amount when kids are playing with them. It's bigger than just teaching, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I was going to just share some photos that you've shared with me. I'm just going to pull them up, and maybe you can just talk us through what we're looking at.
Sure.
Let me just find them. So, what's this we're looking at here, Kate?
This was when I was little. This is my parents' room that we had our piano in. It's a kind of walk-through room. You have to go through this space to get to everything else. So I'd be having my piano lessons there with the rest of the family, you know, the cat jumping on the piano, people walking past. So it taught me to be able to concentrate when there's a lot of other things going on, which is really helpful for a teacher, actually. Because like I said, we've got lots going on at our music school. The teachers have to be able to focus on what they're doing. So it's nice to get that experience early on. But yeah, that was the piano where I had my piano lesson. You can't really see in this photo, but it's sort of halfway under the stairs as well.
Yeah.
So you had to watch that you didn't bump your head. My nan and granddad actually paid for my lessons in the beginning. That's how we got started and gave us the piano. And then as time went on, my parents obviously took over and paid for my lessons. And I don't know how they continued, because when I was about 12 or 13, I was really horrible and didn't want to come to my lessons at all. And I remember being upstairs shouting, I don't want to do it. I was actually really grateful that they pushed me to continue to do it, because my whole career and a lot of other people's livelihoods are based upon them continuing to push through those horrible teenage years.
How old were you when you started then?
I think I was about 7 or 8 when I started playing. So yeah, it's a good age actually to start with a kind of formal lesson, whereas before that we prefer it to be a bit more play-based.
Yeah.
But that's a good age to get started at something a bit more formal, yeah.
Cool. So can you tell me what is going on in this picture?
Sure. So one thing that we realised early on was that the children and adults needed performance opportunities. Some want to do graded exams and go through that and have the exam as a focus, and others just really wanted to be able to perform. So once a year, obviously not during the COVID years, but once a year, every other year, and we just did it last week, We have a really big concert at St Mary's Church in Sandwich. It's St Mary's Arts Centre, they call it. It's a lovely building. If you haven't been, go. It's beautiful. And so here in this photo, you can see there's children, some young, some sort of teenagers and adults, performing in a little band that our teacher Dave put together. We don't tend to have bands running all year round because the amount of noise it would create would stop us running any other lessons at the time. But when we've got a concert coming up, we tend to get the students to perform and practice individually with their teacher. And then we'll pop them all together for a few practices before they go and perform in front of, this time, an audience of nearly 250 people.
Wow. And how impressive is that venue?
It really is lovely. And some people go up and perform on their own. Some people go up in pairs, and some people go up in big groups. It really depends on what the pupil feels most comfortable with.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're creating a bespoke experience for them, not just in lessons, but even in the performances as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things right from the beginning, we said that every lesson needs to be tailored to the individual. Not everybody learns the same. There's no point in having a book and a program that you follow like they do in school. You know, you must follow this aspect of the curriculum. If children really hate performing, they never have to perform with us. If they really want to do exams, we can push them through the exams. You know, if they want to learn in pairs because they're too nervous to learn by themselves, that's fine too. If they need their mum there with them, some parents even learn alongside their children. It just depends on what the student needs, and we assess that fairly early on and work with them to make sure that the lessons and any performance opportunities are enjoyable for them.
Oh, that's awesome. I take it this is your school?
Yep, that's our music school. We're based in Ash, which is quite near to Sandwich. It actually says Canterbury on our address, but we're really close to Sandwich. You can see at the front there, that's the office. And then when you go through the green gate that's at the side, that leads down to all of the music rooms. There's a waiting area, there's a little garden. In fact, we had some students recently repot all those plants at the front, and there's tomatoes and peppers growing there as well now. So everybody sort of gets involved if they want to, with keeping the place nice and tidy and helping with the gardening. In the office, we've got 3 of us that work in there, and then the rest of the building is shared. Some teachers work only for a few hours a day, once a week, and other teachers are there every single day for 6, 7, 8 hours. So again, just like for the students, for the teachers themselves, the experience is bespoke as well. And they can work as many or as few hours as they like.
Wow. So can you run off a quick list of some of the instruments or lessons that you give?
Sure. The most popular are singing, piano, drums and guitar. We're also teaching sax, flute, recorder, clarinet, trumpet, trombone. What have I missed? Ukulele. We've actually got teachers who are specialists in instruments, but quite a few teachers who also teach a second or third instrument as well. Oh, violin. Blimey, yeah, violin's pretty popular at the moment. We're teaching students as young as 4 formal lessons, they want to, right up to adults, you know, retired adults. So there's lessons there on whatever instrument really you want to learn. We don't have at the moment a bagpipe teacher. We used to. That's one we're not doing. So it is really the more obscure instruments that we might direct people to other teachers that we know of, because we do focus a lot on the most popular instruments, obviously.
Yeah. So if someone local was keen or to find out more or to get in touch, how would they reach you?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, if people are on Facebook, so all sorts of music on Facebook. That also links to Instagram, but I'm not very good with Instagram. So I'm not certain that it always uploads everything on there. Or you can just go to our website, which is allsortsofmusic.co.uk. Facebook is usually the easiest one and the one that most people can see the most information, because we upload photos, you know, way more often on there than we do the website. The website's more about terms and conditions and things like that.
Yeah.
If anybody watching is wanting to get into music but is worried about the financial aspect, there are also bursaries that we can access for people or direct people to that they can access themselves, which helps significantly with the cost of lessons. sometimes being able to give some free lessons, sometimes just discounted lessons. So there's lots of options available. We've recently had a home ed group who wanted to do guitar come to us, and they're splitting the cost between, I think, 5 or 6 of them. And we do split the cost. We don't charge more just because there's more people in the group. We've never done that, and we hopefully never will. So if that's a barrier for people, then don't let it be. Get in touch and we'll see how we can help with that. Equally, if somebody wants to get into music but they're really nervous about it, we can go through and show them photos of what the room looks like that they're going to be in, who the teacher is, pictures of the teacher, and they can always come up and have a look around before any lesson is committed to. We always offer a free trial lesson in the beginning as well, so that people can get an idea of what it is before committing to anything at all. And we're happy to arrange that for anybody who wants to. Equally, if anybody wants to get into teaching, if they're already playing music at a high level and they want to get in, we do have student teachers come in as well, which is really good because it gives them an opportunity to learn how to teach and to share their passion with others. And it gives parents an opportunity to sign their kids up for lessons that are obviously cheaper because it's with a student teacher. So it's a win-win situation all round.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate, for sharing everything today. And what a lovely way to round off our Careers Week. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
See you later.